Frankenstein's Aunt by Rune Pettersson, Frankenstein Jr., and others. The second number this evening, said Hannah Frankenstein. As most of you know, the Frankenstein family have certain connections with the great English poet Shelley, or to be more accurate, with his wife, Mary. This evening, the youngest member of our family, whom I now call Junior for the first time in history, will read a piece of poetry by the aforementioned Shelley. Ladies and gentlemen, she took a step back and turned to the end wall, thinking that it was a pity she was the only master of ceremonies when she really wanted to play the main part. From Shelley's lyrical poem about the tormented Titan Prometheus, who burst his bonds, you will now hear an extract of a new interpretation by my excellent secretary Franz. The person reading this extract is himself a tormented giant. A man who has suffered as Prometheus did, but who has risen again from purgatory, far fresher than any fabled phoenix bird. Why did I say that, she thought. What did it sound like? A bit muddled, I imagine, mixing up Prometheus and the phoenix in that way. Ladies and gentlemen, she went on aloud, making a sweeping gesture toward the side door. Frankenstein Jr. The side door was opened by Franz, and a draft whistled through the hall, making the candles flicker. Then heavy footsteps could be heard out in the darkness, dragging slightly, then coming nearer. Sweat again broke out on hundreds of palms, stomachs fluttered and hearts thumped. An enormous pair of yellow hands appeared, a huge boot another, and there he was, ducking through the doorway, Frankenstein Jr., in Tyrolean costume. A great hum went through the hall, and from the man with the beard came, "It can't be true." "Who is that man over there?" whispered Aunt Frankenstein. Monster stopped in the middle of the floor, his enormous boots apparently even larger now. He was wearing shorts. His yellow knees looked like the legs of a very old circus elephant, and at least 2 clowns could have got into the Tyrolean shorts and still had room left over. His sleeves were too short and emphasized his great size even more. He had refused to be parted from his jacket. The Tyrolean hat sat on his flat head as if it had been flung up onto a cliff ledge. The cathode and anode glinted in the candlelight. The monster was holding a piece of paper in front of him. Then he cleared his throat with a noise like thunder and started reading in a deep, monotonous, sepulchral voice. Oh, woe, alas, pain, ever, forever. Gretchen simply could not keep quiet any longer. "But, Mother, why is he wearing Tyrolean costume?" "I suppose so he doesn't look horrible," her mother whispered back. "Be quiet now." There were people in the audience who thought he had never looked so horrible as he did now. But from over the door rose a suppressed giggle from the man with a beard. Who was he? Aunt Frankenstein felt she would go mad if she didn't find out soon. There was something so familiar about that face, those deep lines in his forehead and the slightly turned-up nose, and yet she didn't recognize him. Monster went on with his recital, his deep voice making the windows rattle. "No change, no pause, no hope, yet I endure. I ask the earth, have not the mountains felt? I ask you, heaven, the all-beholding sun, has it not seen the sea in storm or calm, heaven's ever-changing shadow spread below? Have its deaf waves not heard my agony on me? Alas, pain, ever, forever." Irmgard leaned over to her husband. "It's really gripping," she said in a thick voice. "Yes," said the innkeeper, his eyes shining. "We probably weren't very nice to him," Monster went on. "He whom some dreadful voice invokes is here, Prometheus, the changed Titan, horrible forms. What and who are you? Never yet there came phantom so foul through monster-teeming hell." The guard leaned over to the station master. Do You think he means us? One might well wonder, said his railway colleague. From the all-miscreative brain of Jove, whilst I behold such execrable scrapes, methinks I grow like what I contemplate, and laugh and stare in loathsome sympathy. Oh, yes, said the guard. I understood that dig. It was a subtle one. The recital was over. Monster bowed stiffly and retreated. The applause broke out, a tremendous clapping, people standing on the benches and whistling and shouting, jubilant with happiness and relief, now that the tension had gone. Franz and Igor helped to carry out refreshments. A large barrel of beer was dragged on a decorated wheelbarrow into the middle of the floor, and a whole battery of lemonade was carried in. Through the jubilant applause, the man in the brown suit thrust his way into Hannah Frankenstein, his eyes shining above his beard. Auntie, absolutely fantastic. I really must congratulate you. What an achievement, what a feat. I am overwhelmed. He took her hand and shook it hard. Thank you. Thank you, said Aunt Frankenstein with some reserve. Excuse me, but who are you? Don't you recognize me, Auntie? Does my beard really change me that much? The voice, the turned-up nose, the eyes. Henry! Cried Aunt Frankenstein. Henry, you wretch! Is it you? Yes, it's me, laughed Henry Frankenstein. Me, none other. Mr. Henry, said Igor, looking like a delighted puppy reunited with his master. Welcome back, he went on, smiling with his white teeth. Thank you, Igor. Thanks very much. You look at least 30 years younger with those new choppers. 30, said Igor. I think I look 70 years younger. I'll send you the dentist's bill later, said Aunt Frankenstein to Henry. Well, you good for nothing. Back again, are you? She felt she had to subdue her delight, considering the circumstances. Well, I suppose I must bid you welcome with some hesitation. I understand your hesitation, said Henry. I understand that, but everything's so different now. Then Larry Talbot came over, relaxed and happy, a large tankard of beer in his hand, and the postmistress at his heels. The butcher had already left, and they could hear his Daimler starting up with a roar outside the castle. Hello, Henry. So your exile's over, is it? Yes, a rumor reached me about these great successes in all directions, and when I heard about this soiree, I decided I came here as quickly as I could, but we arrived too late. We? Said Aunt Frankenstein. Surely you haven't married. No, not me, said Henry, but, oh, Auntie, I have such plans. Hannah took half a step backwards, her voice icy cold as she said, What? You've got plans? Henry was looking like a delighted schoolboy. His aunt saw that despite his beard, he hadn't grown up one single bit. It was the same old good-for-nothing Henry, standing in front of her with his same attitude that life was just one endless irresponsible Christmas day. She had already mentally begun to pack her bags. Auntie, said Henry, it's all so fantastic, and Monster is so changed too. Junior, I mean. Think how surprised she'll be, Auntie. I swear it'll be the wedding of the century. Henry, said Aunt Frankenstein icily, please calm down. What is this wedding you're talking about, and who is she? Please speak up now. Incidentally, you look much better without a beard. Auntie, dear, I'm sorry I was so excited by all this. Do you remember Dr. Pretorius, Auntie? Do you mean, said Aunt Frankenstein, that crazy loon who came here and helped you make a bride for the monster? Yes, that's right, that's him, a really brilliant man. You should see his homemade dwarfs, Auntie. He keeps them in small glass jars. Oh, they're living works of art. But talking about the bride, you know what happened, Auntie. The bride and the monster didn't take to each other, found no favor, so to speak. That wasn't really all that peculiar, considering what she looked like. I mean, appearances shouldn't matter all that much, but we really did fail there, Pretorius and I. She really did look absolutely frightful, to be honest. Oh, yes, said Aunt Frankenstein. And an icicle could not have been sharper or colder. But Henry did not allow his enthusiasm to be chilled. He looked as if he might burst with enthusiasm any minute. I expect you're wondering what I've been doing all this time, Auntie? Then he dropped the bomb, his eyes shining. Oh, Auntie, we've done a facelift on the bride. She's sitting out there in my carriage with Dr. Pretorius. Come on, Auntie, come and meet her. Hannah Frankenstein raised her large nose a trifle and ejected one single word. Never! Henry looked like a balloon that had been hit by a blast from a shotgun. What? he said. You could see and hear the air going out of him. I said never, Aunt Frankenstein said again, and then she turned to her secretary standing in the crowd, a tankard of beer in his hand. Franz, go and pack your pajamas and telescope at once. We're leaving tonight. But Auntie, said Henry, she's a beauty, a real smasher. Monster will fall for her in a big way this time, and she'll fall for him. Now, he's got to so grand and cultured, Auntie, but wait. Why are you leaving, Auntie? Auntie, come back! But Aunt Frankenstein was already on her way, striding up to her room to do her packing. The party went on without her, the beer flowing, the villagers laughing and shrieking. Prometheus had indeed burst his chains. Satisfied with his debut as a reciter of poetry, Monster stepped out into the night through a back door to get a breath of fresh air. He had taken off the silly clothes Aunt Frankenstein had insisted on dressing him up in, and was once again wearing his dear old black serge trousers that matched his shrunken jacket so well. He felt the soft August night caressing his flat skull, and stopped to look up at the grand red moon. Its red color brought back a memory to his confused brain, a dim memory of a woman-like creature he had once met, an unhappy memory of an unsuccessful meeting, a great disappointment. The memory brought with it a great longing in his massive chest, the most important part of which had come from a sailor in Himmelsdorf, a man with a very hot temper. It was an indefinite longing for something red, like the moon, like a pair of lips, like a great disappointment. He raised his great hands to the moon and suddenly felt as unhappy and lonely as only a monster can. He started stumbling aimlessly on, simply walking, his boots shuffling through the dry grass, the crickets silenced in terror in his path. Suddenly he was standing in the space in front of the castle, now emptied of people, but full of all kinds of carriages and horses. Harnesses rustled and hooves stamped impatiently as the horses caught his strange scent. Slightly apart from the others was a covered black carriage with lighted lanterns. Monster heard someone talking inside the carriage and thought he recognized the voice. He quickened his pace, taking great strides, almost tripping in his haste. Inside the carriage, he saw Dr. Pretorius, a man of about 60 with curly reddish hair and a pointed nose with a flat bridge. He was just getting rather irritable because Henry had been so long, and it was a great strain sitting and talking reassuringly to the creature sitting beside him. Some automobile maniac had almost scared them both out of their wits just now, revving away down the drive. The creature was a broad-shouldered woman-like figure with a white face, a pouting blood-red mouth, and startling red hair in a sort of giant afro cut far ahead of its time. She moved her head with small, nervous, jerky, bird-like movements, and when she did so, certain stitches and scars in her skin became clearly visible. Though, from a surgical point of view, it was all exemplary needlework. Pretorius really thought the bride had become a beauty in her revised edition. They had given her the job description and nickname of Elsa II. Suddenly, Dr. Pretorius heard a scraping noise outside the carriage. Henry coming at last, he thought. But it was not Henry. It was another old acquaintance. Monster was looking into the carriage, and Pretorius saw at that moment he had succeeded. The electric crackling when contact was made could almost be heard. Love at second sight. He leaped out of the carriage and ran over to the castle to tell Henry the news. And at the front porch, he was almost trampled by a tall, elderly lady dressed in black, coming out carrying 2 suitcases. And that's the end of that chapter.